People are just out on the streets, dealing mifepristone, in little baggies, smiling faces,
Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling.
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
The ridiculous.
Like omelets better than sex.
And downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There's no vegan jail.
Seriously.
Welcome to Seriously. I'm exhausted.
Are you also Michelle?
Yeah, I am. I mean,
I'm exhausted.
We're your dynamic duo that is literally barely making it through today's podcast.
Although I'm pretty excited to talk about what we have to talk about today.
Yeah, me too. So today we're going to do a very deep dive into House Bill 575, which is the civil liability for random family members to sue random people that may or may not have had something to do with someone getting an abortion.
Correct.
That's basically the gist of it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be very nerdy, very in the weeds, but there were a lot of interesting moments, and we will get into that. But first, what was your seriously moment this week?
I feel like most of my seriously moments are about this bill, about HB 575. I guess the only other thing would be that seriously, also this week, and we had arguments in the controlled dangerous substance litigation. So the litigation that we have challenging mifepristone and misoprostol being classified as controlled dangerous substances, which is sort of interfused with this bill that, like, literally in the middle of Ventrela's bill being in committee and it being on the floor, then also we were going to court with the state trying to get the case dismissed, which, spoiler alert, they lost, we won, so that was all great. Both just so much shit to be doing at the same time.
Right.
And there's always a lot of sort of uncertainty and stress, like going into hearings on, motions to dismiss with a case like this. But with this one, then we also didn't know until a couple days before who the judge was going to be.
Right.
The judge was going to want or expect live testimony or not. So yeah, it was a pretty fun week of a lot of bullshit, but we won, and the case is moving forward. The judge decided that we have sufficiently alleged harm for the plaintiffs and that they have a right of action to go forward. So that was the good news, but there was a lot of how could this all be happening at one time? How could how could there be this much uncertainty? Going into this is very significant hearing in the life of the case.
So I'm going to talk about Adriana Smith, who's a 30-year-old Georgia mother who was declared brain dead in February, and she is forcibly being kept on life support because of the state's abortion ban. So the doctors are being required to keep her on a breathing machine, and her family can't do anything about it. And there are still 11 weeks left in her pregnancy.
That's insane. There was a bill here, you will remember, years ago, that would have required the state to keep a patient on life support. That's right. If they were pregnant, regardless of the family's consent and regardless of any advance directive from the patient. I guess, yeah, with the abortion ban in Georgia, then none of that matters. Really. Effectively that is.
I mean, it's a fucking horror show. I mean, it's disgusting. And it's not lost on me that this is a Black woman that they are running this experiment on.
Why are you trying to just make it just so much more damn?
Well, I'm just saying, we talk a lot about oh yeah, they just want us to, we're just vessels in their mind. Literally we are just vessels.
Yeah.
I guess they could just lobotomize us and,
Well, and again, we're when an affirmative proposal like this was proposed, people saw the problems and it didn't go through. But again, with abortion bans in the states, and nobody sort of recognized, that this is what it results in.
Yeah.
All of these things that when people thought about it, they were like, nah, that's a bridge too far. No, that's where we are.
It's crazy. Can the family sue anybody? I don't even
know who. Doctors are following the law.
Right.
And they can sue the state.
Yeah.
That this is what the law is having this effect on them.
Wow.
Yeah.
My God, it's so disgusting. It's really disturbing. It's really disturbing. Okay, so let's shift to other fuckery, which is this bill 575. So this is Representative Laura Ventrella, and I'll just tell folks, if you go to her website, she is a lawyer. I'm putting lawyer in quotes. I mean, she practices law. I wouldn't hire her. I mean, I don't know. As we go along, listeners can make up their own minds about whether she is unclear about what the law that she's passing actually is, or whether she's just lying. I know you and
I am a big believer that she is 100% lying. Michelle thinks that she is. Just
that she might not just, she just might not understand.
I think there's probably a combination. I think it's a combination. Very convinced because, again, this bill is so, it says what it says so obviously, if you are a lawyer, that most of it is lying.
On her website, she has, a very choice money shot of her walking up some stairs that very obviously capture her red bottom shoes. So I'm glad that she felt like, it was really important for her to show her clients that she has like $700 shoes. Just ridiculous. Anyway. All right. So
she's a lot of flash. There's a lot of flash and no substance with her. I will give you that.
Yeah. So it was heard in the House Civil Law and Procedure Committee on Monday. And so we're going to just really play through a lot of what that hearing was and talk about it along the way. So I'm going to start with how they introduced the bill. So this was Representative Ventrella, and she was accompanied by the state attorney general.
None other than Liz Merle, our state attorney general.
And also the new policy director for the Louisiana Right to Life, Erica.
Yeah.
So, okay. So here, we'll just get started, and you just tell me when you want me to stop. Okay, here we go.
Right to Life has found a new avenue to dissuade and hold responsible doctors or people out of state who still prescribe these drugs in violation of our law. So basically, it was a legal loophole, a problem, and now we have came up with a solution. What this bill does is it allows us to hold these people who prescribe the drug liable for civil damages in the form of a penalty.
Let's just start here with the New York doctor that they've already indicted. They can't really indict her, can't really prosecute her, all that bullshit. These are the people that this gives us another tool in the toolbox. Well, New York has a civil shield law also. Like, this, another avenue, whatever they're fucking talking about. It's not viable. Right? There is no way to do that. New York's going to take those papers, wad them up, throw them in the garbage, just like they did with, the extradition request about charging this doctor. And just like they did when fucking Texas sent a civil liability lawsuit about this same doctor to New York. They said, thank you, goodbye.
Yeah. Okay. But, Liz Merle, our esteemed attorney general, is supporting this, as she had to be at the table.
The problem that we have is that there are activists who are intent on sending these pills to people through the mail. They have set up a process by which that they can do that. It is an illegal process, make no mistake about that, but this bill provides for civil liability and allows another mechanism. It is another tool in the toolbox for people who are harmed by somebody who is intent on violating our laws. It is a crime what they're doing, but because of states like New York, whose governor basically has put herself in the breach and will refuse to extradite this doctor, we're not going to stop trying to extradite her and prosecute her for the crimes that she's committing in our state. But that doesn't mean that you or I or any of us have to allow that to continue when there are other ways that we can also address the problem.
Just totally not sure. I mean, or at least there would be exactly the same effect. And,
right.
Liz knows that.
Yeah.
That there with this example of the New York doctor, and with the vast majority of states that have criminal shield laws, they also have civil shield laws. So this does not provide another, quote, tool in the toolbox. It will similarly be rejected because, again, in blue states, they were not fucking morons and realized that, what else could, the asshole states, Louisiana and Texas do, that are trying to harm our doctors who are just fucking trying to, help help a sister out down in Louisiana.
Well, the other thing is that if they were really trying to get at these doctors in other states, then this law would be narrowly tailored to that, but it's not. But I think what's really going on here is that they know they're not going to get to those doctors, but they can use this situation as justification to enact a law that is very broad.
That's
So a whole lot more people, really, that is who the right to life wants to get.
That's right.
at.
And that's like that's the sort of my huge frustration. The bill that they are proposing on the face of it does not limit the liability in any way to abortions that are illegal, to unlawful abortions. It does not limit it in any way to someone doing any wrong, someone engaging in any wrongdoing to try to, cause an illegal abortion. It's very, very broad. As we talk about in the legislature all the time, it doesn't fucking matter what you say the purpose or the intent is. It matters what the language of the law is. And then the added frustration being, and what you're talking about is never going to happen anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the same with the bill that Senator Presley passed last year, which we are litigating.
Yeah.
They come in with this, horrible story about what happened. And so we have to pass this law, but then we're going to add on this other component to the law that really has absolutely nothing to do and would not do a thing to stop the conduct that claim they need to prevent in the original law.
That's right. The original law was about coercive, was about people being forcibly, against their will, given abortion pills that somebody else is giving them so they have an abortion. And then they added to that bill the classifying 2 safe, effective drugs that are used for a million different purposes, classifying those drugs as controlled dangerous substances, which just makes them harder to prescribe and harder to get. It doesn't make it any harder to get for an illegal purpose.
Right.
It only makes them harder to get for the legal purposes in Louisiana.
Okay, let's go back.
Particular sad part of this was the little girl in this particular case was a minor, and the mother basically made her take this drug. She actually had a gender reveal party planned for the baby and very much wanted to keep this.
So I did not really want to give them the space to talk about this, but the gender reveal party, I'm sorry, we should not be having gender reveal parties. The stupidest fucking thing. They're the stupidest fucking thing anyway. But really, what makes me absolutely insane about this is we don't know what any of the facts of this situation are. Charges have been filed. People have been indicted.
This is that's right. I mean, particularly because it is a criminal case, and the narrative that is out there is just what the prosecutors want to say. They did not indict anyone on coerced abortion.
That's right. They keep saying that the mother coerced her child to have an abortion, but she has not been charged.
They did not indict anyone on that.
Yeah.
We have no idea what this is based on. This is all just unverified. And it might be true. We have no idea.
We have no idea.
They literally repeat it over and over and over again as if these are facts that have been proven. They have not only have they not been proven, these are not facts that have been even alleged in any official way.
That's right. But I'm just saying, if you want me to have sympathy, in this narrative, don't talk about a gender reveal party. I'm just whatever.
Hear of these stories all the time. Of the complications that arise from the abortion pills and how they've been obtained, and whether it's used coercively or simply that the women who obtained them did not know the full extent of what was going to happen. When a woman does a medication abortion, often she's doing this in her own home. A young woman might be doing this upstairs while her parents are downstairs watching TV. It's a situation that's happening in the homes of these women, in their private places, in their sacred places. Anyone, man, woman, minor, adult, can go online and simply search for abortion pills, and they'll be provided with a plethora of websites that often direct them to a doctor that is usually situated in what we call a shield state, like New York, California, North Carolina. These are states that have erected a body of law to shield providers of abortion pills from criminal liability, like Attorney General Murrell was explaining. Though the doctors are purported to be doctors in these out-of-state, these shield states, number one, they're not doctors in Louisiana. They're not licensed to practice medicine or telemedicine in Louisiana. Our current law, the law that is being revised in this bill, already provides an avenue for a woman harmed by abortion to seek civil damages from the provider of the abortion. But the way that it's written is, really doesn't contemplate this new frontier of abortion.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, the sanctity of the home. I mean, come on. What is the point? I mean, what is the point of that?
I mean, she goes on to to claim, of course, that all of this is unsafe, that it's being provided to people, in an unsafe way without any, sufficient medical information, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Well, the bill is nothing about trying to hold liable out-of-state doctors who are practicing negligently, or people out of state who are not doctors, who are, essentially providing medical care without a license.
There is a law, it's been on the books for about 2 decades, right, that allows someone who had an abortion to sue a doctor civilly for performing an abortion.
If you had an abortion, you had a cause of action for civil liability against the doctor who had performed it, even if it didn't really fall below the standard of care. It was basically making it easier for a patient to sue somebody for providing them an abortion, even if they had informed consent and the usual stuff that would preclude malpractice. But in the situations they're talking about, it's actually the same.
Mm-hmm.
That the person is consenting to it and getting the care from an out-of-state doctor where it's not illegal for that doctor to be providing the care. So it's not really all that different.
Why do we think that our doctors are so much better? Just because they're licensed in Louisiana,
You can't, I mean,
it's ridiculous.
you can't perform except you have to be a
No,
Louisiana
I
doctor.
understand that, but the way that they're making it sound, it's like, well, obviously they're purported doctors. They're not doctors in Louisiana. Who knows? Obviously, our doctors are far superior than. Although we're not going to have any fucking.
That's
yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're almost done with this part of the hearing.
Recent study by the Ethics and Public Policy Center looked at insurance data from 2017 to 2023 and found that 11% of women who were prescribed abortion pills suffered a severe adverse reaction. We often hear that abortion pills are safer than Tylenol, but this study proves it contradicts that.
It's very easy for them to come out and say it's safe. It's not safe. There is no medical care happening here. These are not doctors providing health care. They are drug dealers. It is not different than if they were sending fentanyl or they were sending any other illegal drug, because it's illegal to mail it to our state for purposes of procuring an abortion.
Very strong words from Liz Merle. So Erica is talking about this recent study that has all kinds of methodology problems, and we'll get deeper into that on a future episode. The way that the antis are now really trying to attack the safety and efficacy of the abortion medication. But yeah, I think what our legislators and what the antis here, they are constantly talking about how unsafe these drugs are, comparing them to, illicit drugs that are abused. This was the whole rationale behind scheduling them, is because they're being abused. The people are just out on the streets, dealing mifepristone, in little baggies with smiling faces, it's ridiculous. Oh God. So that was how they introduced the bill. And then Representative Wilford Carter jumped in, and I want to play a little bit of his exchange because it went on for a while, and some of what he said didn't make a whole lot of sense, but he made some really good points.
And I also
He was the only one that talked.
I want to point out on the front end, it's he was the only person, period, that pushed back at all on this bill. He's the only person who basically said any fucking thing at all during this insane hearing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's listen to some of Rick Carter.
You make it sound like it's an automatic that everybody think like you do, Madam Attorney General. I have to disagree with you, and I'll be happy to get your comments on. that this bill is going to solve a problem. It's going to make an expression by the legislature of Louisiana, yes, of those that firmly against abortion. Yes, it will make a statement.
Stop for 1 second. Because Ventrell also on the floor starts talking at some point about, like, you know, we want to send a message. We want to send a message. And like, I've been thinking about that a bunch because, again, like, the problem here is with what's so disingenuous about that is that the bill is not limited in any way to something that would send a message. Like, the bill could be narrowly tailored to sending a message, but they're refusing to do any of that. They're leaving it extremely broad where it can be, you know, lawsuits can be brought against all kinds of folks, you know, Louisiana doctors who are just trying to provide miscarriage management, like, you know, pharmacists who thought that they were just dispensing the drugs for a bona fide purpose, but I don't know, now I'm getting fucking sued. You know, the person who helped you get out of state to you know, get a legal abortion somewhere else. Like, there's no limitation. And so if this is about sending a message, okay, all right. So then let's make it so that it's sending a message. Because right now, what you say it's going to do, as he's pointing out, it's not really going to do. But what it is going to do is open up like a gajillion other people to liability. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then Liz has to jump in.
The comparison made to fentanyl and the pills, abortion pills, it's not the same. People dying in Louisiana and in New York, all over the country from fentanyl, small amount of fentanyl. Okay, we don't know how many cases that are injured from these pills.
These are illegal pills. These are not legally prescribed pills.
We in Louisiana got one of the highest infant mortality rates in the country. We directing our attention not to that problem, infant mortality rates, and what we do with children after they're born. So we want to make sure we don't do abortion. That's our number one thing. I'm not trying to win an argument because I'm not, but I'm just trying to make a point to start the discussion that our people feel got different position than your position, and your position might not even be the majority position. It may be a majority position on this committee, but it's not the majority position in this state. And you're hijacking the position of other people in the state that may feel different from you.
What's important to remember is that last year, a majority of this legislature stated with our votes that we believe that these prescription medications are no longer legal in the state of Louisiana.
Well, let's do a constitutional amendment. Make this a constitutional amendment so all the people can vote on whether or not they believe in this process. You know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to say the legislature says something, but the people of Louisiana always agree with the legislature.
That's a very good point. But yeah, twice, Liz Murrell, they're illegal. You can't prescribe these drugs. We voted to make these medications illegal. No.
Yeah. Liz, like, I guess she sort of tailored it, like they're being prescribed illegally. Rep. Ventrella said multiple times, you do not have enough of the number of times. And she said over and over and over again that these are illegal drugs. These are illegal drugs. These are illegal drugs that are being sent to our state illegally. That is 100% not true.
She may think that that's what she voted on last year with the Presley bill,
which would be interesting because the whole talking points back then was how that bill would not make the drugs illegal.
Right.
That was the whole thing that they told us with the controlled dangerous substances classification. Like, nothing about this law will make these drugs illegal. Nothing about this law will prevent a single person in Louisiana or a single doctor from prescribing them. No one will be prevented getting them, no one prescribing them. So yeah, now, oh wait, turns out that our own elected people have no fucking idea what the law did. I was flabbergasted, as my grandmother would say.
Well, you do talk about it, so let's listen to your testimony. And this is just a snippet of it, the greatest hits, shall we say.
Well, I want to say on the front end, as people know, as we've talked about, that you're very worried about you're going to get cut off all the time and how much time you're going to have. So I was like, it was like a machine gun firing of like, these are the problems. Like, even in the longer version of this, I did not cover all of them. There are more problems with the bill.
All right. Well, let's listen to the greatest legal mind in Louisiana, not our attorney general or this Ventrilla Louboutin,
That's a low standard, though.
Right. Okay, here we go.
The claim that these drugs are illegal in our state, or it is illegal to prescribe these drugs in our state, which I'm assuming that they mean, based on those comments, mifepristone and misoprostol. That's 100% not true. Those drugs are legal in our state and are regularly prescribed here legally for non-abortion purposes. So for postpartum hemorrhage, for miscarriage management, for things that are not even reproductive health related, like ulcers. Those drugs are safe and necessary, not just in terms of inducing an abortion, but for totally separate purposes. So when we're talking about things like that, like a comparison to fentanyl, we actually have a statute here that does create civil liability for people who are engaged in the illicit marketing and trafficking of fentanyl. There are three essential elements to civil liability, to tort liability: fault, causation, and damages. And this bill does not require any of those things. Then nothing is differentiating between legal conduct and illegal conduct. And as I've already said, then these drugs are prescribed, sold, used every single day in Louisiana for legal purposes, and sometimes for life-saving purposes, like for in postpartum hemorrhage. Also,
wouldn't they give a pregnancy test before they give that pill?
Postpartum
hemorrhage?
I'm asking her.
With the postpartum hemorrhage, then you've just had a baby, like literally.
Yeah. So so this was the one question that was asked.
Yeah.
From the chair, or from anybody. But I so did not understand where it was coming from. Luckily, Morgan Lemondre sitting next to me was like, for postpartum hemorrhage.
And he's such a jerk. He's like, I'm asking.
I know, let her answer. Like, I'm not going to have an answer to the question. I was like, so confused. I was, where are you going with this?
Okay.
It's a strict liability statute or bill, and it doesn't even have the ordinary requirements for strict liability. Like these are not unreasonably dangerous products. They're in fact safe, legal, FDA approved for many legal purposes in Louisiana. The language of the bill strikes out the part of the existing law that says a person is liable for any damage occasioned or precipitated by the abortion. That's being taken out. The damage part's being taken out. What's being added in instead is statutory damages. The statement earlier was that it's like a small penalty. It's a minimum of $100,000 in statutory damages to any of these folks, regardless of whether they did anything wrong or they knew anything about this. And then same with causation. I mean, that's taking out the causation language. The comparisons again to drug dealers and the fentanyl comparison and all of that. We also have a statutory scheme, the Louisiana Drug Dealers Liability Act, which is for situations with drugs that are legal and also are illegal. So you're giving a cause of action to various family members who, do not have to have the patient's best interest in mind. They don't have to have that person's consent to sue. They don't have to be suing in that person's best interest. They'll be able to get people's medical records. You can also get at least $100,000 in statutory damages without showing any harm. So there's a large incentive for people who are unrelated, who are removed from the whole situation, to sue on, where there would never be standing to do so under any of our normal rules. This isn't limited to out-of-state actors. This also, anybody in our state could be sued under this too. And there is a part that purports to exempt doctors or pharmacists who are engaged in care that is not defined as an abortion under 1487.1. But the problem, as we know, of course, is that it's doctors are already having a hard time navigating that law and determining, when does this count as an abortion and when does it not? Because that law uses vague, non-medical terms. So now doctors will also have to be worried that they're going to get sued by some family member. This bill takes away malpractice protections. If you get sued as a doctor under this broad scheme of no fault, no causation, no damages, where somebody who has very little knowledge or interest in the suit can sue you, then there's no limitations on your liability and you don't benefit from any of the medical review panel, et cetera. How does a malpractice insurer know if you're going to be getting sued because just somebody thinks that you provided an abortion, even though you feel confident that within your medical judgment it fits within one of the exceptions?
Yeah. So that was a lot. And the best part about it is a lot of what you said in terms of the impact on medical providers in the state was, completely corroborated by the person who came and testified on behalf of the Louisiana State Medical Society. So,
well, also newsflash, many of the things that I said, people pointed out those same things and asked those same questions like on the floor.
oh,
Thanks for doing your legal research for you. Maybe you guys should pay a little more attention in committee. That's your only chance, man. Your only chance, man, to get something done on this bill in committee.
Yeah.
Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, so Mariah Bowen from the Louisiana State Medical Society came and testified about their concerns, which really mirrored a lot of what you were saying and gave some specific examples we'll listen to. But it was notable because they never come and testify against these bills.
Ventrella, after all of this, goes back up, of course, to close. And one of the things she says, there's not a single doctor here testifying. I'm like, the fucking Louisiana State Medical Society represents most all of the doctors, most doctors in the state. Not all, but most.
Yeah, okay. So let's listen to Mariah.
It may be an ectopic pregnancy. You may not have a very good relationship with your mother-in-law. She may not know what happened to that pregnancy and just decide to sue the physician and others involved simply as a fishing expedition. Now that young lady's health records are out there, the physician is going to have to defend themselves. We are outside of Medical Malpractice Act. There is some question as to whether or not the insurance provider that you use for medical malpractice will even be able to defend you, or if you will have to go find outside counsel for legitimate health care, medical care. When we look at the burden of proof being flip-flopped, a physician will legitimately have to go prove their innocence rather than being given the ability to have a medical review panel review what medical care was provided. We just find the bill to be overly broad, somewhat aggressive, have the potential for unintended consequences. What if I'm the ER physician who sees the girl who took these medications at home? Is the ER physician the one who actually causes the abortion? I mean, these are the kinds of conversations that we have in the physician realm because none of us are lawyers.
None of us are lawyers.
Yeah. And what everything she said is 100% accurate.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is really frustrating is, and what is not being represented by the proponents of this bill, and you're saying it in a lot of contexts, and Mariah's saying it here, and people really do need to understand is, yes, it says that the civil penalties, a civil judgment wouldn't apply if you were performing a procedure that was an exception, right, in our abortion statute. But that would have to be a judgment made.
That's right.
It's not going to stop a lawsuit
The
from being
statute
passed.
essentially it creates an affirmative defense for a doctor, which is everybody understands, or everybody's lawyers understands that that's an expensive proposition if all you have is an affirmative defense.
Yeah. And it's not like it precludes someone from filing.
That's why it's an expensive proposition.
Yeah, exactly. And what she says here about the flip-flopping, of the burden,
there's a lot of scenarios. In most scenarios here, where we're going to end up is where either like a medical provider and or the patient, the person who's being accused of having had the abortion, where those people are going to have to defend themselves.
Right.
That's the deal. If you have enough facts to assert a claim, then it will be that those people, in effect, have to prove that I did not have an abortion or I did not perform one.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So we have one more person that testified against the bill, Morgan Lamondre. So let's listen. Yeah.
My name's Morgan Lamondre, and I represent STAR, Sexual Trauma Awareness and Response, and we're a nonprofit sexual assault center. HB 575 punishes sexual assault survivors. The woman herself may be technically exempt from being sued under this law, but that is a cruel illusion. Her medical records will be subpoenaed, her trauma will be dissected in court, her privacy, her body, her story, used as a weapon to punish anyone who dared to help her. This is not justice, it is retribution by proxy. And somehow this bill gives legal standing to the parents of the rapists. So let me say that again. It gives standing to the parents of the rapist.
This is one of the things that listeners may remember.
That's right.
Pointed out
We did.
on first reading of the bill was unbelievable. And Ventrilla gets asked about this on the floor, so we'll have a little bit more on that in a few minutes. But yeah, I think, having Morgan there to really hammer that point home was really important.
100%. And yeah, there's so many parts of this bill that would be extremely like traumatizing, problematic for sexual assault survivors. The things that Morgan's talking about in terms of being able to get into patients' medical records, et cetera, it extends far beyond that.
Okay, so then Ventrilla comes back to the table to close on her bill, and she has a nice little impersonation of you during that moment. So we're gonna, you may not remember. Okay, so we'll listen to that.
The one thing that I can say that's most important to bring up, the women before you were not doctors. The doctors understand at this point the definition of what is legal and what is not. Everybody's not just going to be able to sue everybody. We're not opening up the door for frivolous lawsuits, which it's not just, as the previous attorney said, it's strict liability. Everybody's going to get sued for everything. No. Number one, in the statute, causes or substantially facilitates an abortion. Secondly, did an abortion occur? These are things that the jury will have to consider. Look at the definition of abortion. An abortion is any act with the intent to terminate a clinically diagnosable pregnancy with knowledge that those means will, with reasonable likelihood, cause the death of an unborn child.
I mean, the language that she is pointing to, it is exactly what I said. It is completely different than what every other statute along these lines says.
Right.
Causes, it's that this bill says if you do something that causes the result, it doesn't have to approximately cause it. It doesn't have to cause harm. I mean, then I'll just say at this point that people should just need to understand, particularly for all lawyers out there, this bill is literally it's like a torts exam that you would get in law school. But if you got this question, you would be Professor so-and-so, this is a pretty easy question. I mean, the issues are so easy to spot. But thankfully, I had all 3 hours on just this one question. There's so many just batshit crazy things about this bill that have no remote similarity to how our civil laws work.
Can I just make mention that they amended the bill so it did say causes, aids, or abets,
That's
and
right.
they removed aids or abets. And so it says causes or substantially.
It says performs causes
or substantially facilitates. And I'm glad they think that they know that. Well, now they've created a definition of facilitates, but what the term facilitates means doesn't seem to be very clear among Republicans, and especially Republicans of Rep. Ventrilla and Liz Murrell's ilk. So I thought that was
the Trump administration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the Supreme Court said they had to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia, and you're well, we don't know what that means,
And more than that here. So what it apparently means here, because they've now defined the term, so substantially facilitates just means distributing, advertising, marketing, selling, or promoting an abortion-inducing drug. So again, what I've been saying at the time, there's no causation then. Like substantially facilitating an abortion with that definition just means that like in the abstract somewhere that you are doing those things. You are marketing an abortion industry, not with the intent to cause an abortion. So that's it. You just have to be marketing, distributing, or selling that drug. You've substantially facilitated it.
Crazy. So that was the hearing, and then they rushed this bill to the floor. So the hearing was on Monday, and on Wednesday it was on the floor.
I did not think it was possible that it would go that fast. I mean, it shouldn't have. It wasn't like anything procedurally improper, but like it never would have. But why, Michelle? What happened? Why was it that they got it scheduled so fast to be on Wednesday?
Because Wednesday was the Louisiana Right to Life's day at the Capitol. So they had all of their supporters there that they are fleecing out of money by telling them that there is a huge fucking problem with abortion medication.
And that this bill
and that they're going to solve it with this bill. Yeah. And that's why they should, give them $25 a month. Yeah. So that's exactly what they did. They had to rush it to the floor because, all the antis were up in the gallery, praying the rosary. All right. So they bring the bill to the floor and they decided to make one more amendment, which is taking out manufacturers.
As I had pointed out in the committee, that's because under Louisiana law and most state laws, that you cannot sue a manufacturer for anything having to do with damage caused by their products other than under our products liability. Like no one listened to that when I said it in the committee, of course, but eventually then somebody convinced them of that.
Somebody opened up a law book and we're like,
oh shit. You know what? She's right. In the law school exam, that was one of the issues we should have spotted. And just like important point here, like taking manufacturers out was only like in response to the fact that it's impossible to sue manufacturers this way under the law. It's not in recognition of the problem that we've talked about in terms of like the real implications on the supply chain here about whether Louisiana patients and doctors will be able to get misoprostol, a life-saving drug, into this state. Most pharmaceutical drugs do not don't get any hospital or pharmacy by direct sales from a manufacturer. Right. They're being sold through distributors or wholesalers. Those people are still being subjected to the exact same level of who knows what, no fault, no cost, no damages, liability. That's how the drugs get here. Those people are just as liable as they were before.
So Ventrilla, she gets challenged on this bill
a lot.
And
she lies constantly.
And that is what we're going to watch next is a series of lies when she's asked questions from her colleagues in the Louisiana House of Representatives.
It appears that the plaintiff in this instance is going to be the mother of the child that was aborted.
That's correct.
Correct?
That's not correct. I mean, sure, she could be the plaintiff, but in almost all circumstances, she is not going to be.
That is, in fact, the least likely scenario of how one of these lawsuits would have been brought. As we were talking about before, under the existing scheme of this, there have been I think almost zero lawsuits over the 20 years that the current law has been in effect.
Right.
Like it's possible there's been one or two, but I have looked at this extensively, it is an almost zero number of patients who have sued.
So currently in the law, if you give consent, right, and you sign giving consent to the abortion, what does this legislation do once you've given consent?
You can't consent to an abortion through medication-inducing drugs in Louisiana. That is illegal.
That is incorrect. That is incorrect. It is illegal for those drugs to be mailed to people in Louisiana, but the people who ordered them, it's not illegal for them to consent to receive those drugs.
It also is the way that the law works now, and what they're sort of going to is say, again, with a scenario where what were you having a miscarriage? Was the care just miscarriage management, or did you have an abortion? You consented to that care. Normally a doctor, that's what they would be able to rely on. You consented. So the bill is eliminating that. It doesn't matter whether you consented or not. And yes, that's again what in almost no scenario have patients ever been the plaintiff. They have always consented.
Yeah.
They're consenting to taking the pills, whether they obtain them illegally or not, and they consented to the DNC, whether it was for a miscarriage or not.
Yeah. Okay. Line number 2.
You can't consent. So if you just take it on your own, that's not, you can't make that decision. A woman can't make that decision. I want to take this pill and that's what I want to do.
No, last year we signed into
Y'all
law
made that
they
y'all
can-
made that against the law, correct?
Yes.
Does that mean that if it was an act of rape that the parents of the rapist can file suit?
So no, again, they have to have standing to sue.
You said that the natural biological father could not sue in the instance of a rape. You did not provide that exemption to the maternal or paternal grandparent.
Yes, that is correct.
100%.
Yes. Thanks, Rep Newell, for fact checking that.
Yes, I know, which again, I appreciate because, as you and I have talked about, like, Ventrella, she lies over and over and over again. We've already talked about that, like, unfortunately, it's not, like, super uncommon for lawmakers to lie about what's in their bill. But this is at a much different level. Like, I've kind of never seen this level of lying. This is where she's just, like, over and over again lying about what is clear just from reading the language of it.
So if someone provides transportation to someone who needs an abortion and they drive them to a state where abortions are legal, could they be held liable under this bill?
No.
If someone promoted a website that could instruct someone on how and where they can obtain an abortion, would they be liable under your legislation?
No.
Yeah.
So she's on her phone. She's
Yes.
barely listening to the questions that are being asked of her. She's just like, oh, just stop talking. No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the answers are yes to both of these.
Yeah, all of those scenarios. Yes.
So just so people know. So we're not there in person. On my computer, I'm watching the live stream. So I wanted to take off my shoe and throw it at my computer during most of this shit. She's not even trying to justify the answer. Like, what do you mean? Like, why is the answer no? Like literally, like the on its face of the bill, then like there is nothing that would limit it to what you're saying.
It just reminds me of that scene in Mean Girls where, the cute guy turns around in the math class.
Wrong. Is that the summation?
Yeah, they're the same thing.
Wrong. He was so wrong. Wrong.
Literally the scene that's playing in my mind after every answer that she gave throughout.
Well, and she's also just as dismissive. I mean, she is on her phone texting while being to Rep Newell. No.
So let's listen to her justification about the
This is a big deal. So let's give this some.
In discovery under Title 13, there are ways to gain access to her medical records from someone who is not a party to the litigation. Will all of the people that are involved in this have access to their woman's medical records during discovery?
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that was a consideration that I made. They cannot get access to the medical records if the woman is not a party. The judge is not going to rule that medical records should be brought into the suit if there's not a need for them.
How are we proving if the woman is not a part of the litigation and her medical records will not be discoverable?
Well, Rep, respectfully, that ain't my problem and neither is it yours.
Oh. My problem and neither is it yours. You're making the fucking law.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is your problem.
Well, she did a lot of talk about frivolous lawsuit. Like, we can't control who files. People are always going to file frivolous lawsuits. We can't control that. You know what? This won't be a frivolous lawsuit if you pass this bill. A frivolous lawsuit is one where someone is filing something where they don't really have a right to recover under the law. Like they're filing something that like there isn't really.
They can't show any damage.
That's right. They can't. You don't need to here. Yeah, like they're not a person that like should be able to qualify that somebody who can sue in this instance. Like what you're creating is a situation where all the stuff, all the examples that are being used, where like abusive partners could sue, like all sorts of people could sue that have ill intent. She was like, I can't control if people filing frivolous lawsuits. No, you're making their lawsuits not frivolous. That's what you're doing. It's not frivolous if there's actually a cause of action for them to file a lawsuit.
So then Representative Stephanie Hillary gets up and asks some questions, and she's a Republican. She represents a district that's a suburb of New Orleans, or part of New Orleans, and then some suburbs of New Orleans. And she also asks about, she's very concerned about the medical records, and I think asks some good questions and gives Representative Ventrella another opportunity to tell the truth, but she doesn't take it, sadly.
Now that we're talking about multiple other family members getting involved, I guess that's where I have some concern.
They can only get the medical records of a person who is not a party to the lawsuit if after a contradictory hearing with the judge orders that it's necessary.
Wouldn't it not be necessary for this suit to be brought? Because you would need to understand that patient's medical history to even to understand the suit, would it not?
Absolutely, unequivocally it is. So you can't be bringing frivolous lawsuits, and you can't just go suing people because you think somebody killed your unborn child.
So if the woman herself were not a plaintiff and it was an outside family member, then the judge is going to determine whether those medical records get brought in?
That is correct.
You have some women that have, experienced the trauma of multiple miscarriages, and in that instance, the medical records would have to be brought in to show that there was a miscarriage or something.
The doctor also has a right to file a protective order to prevent that discovery from occurring.
We're talking about the woman that this whole suit is revolving around.
And again, if she is not a party to the litigation,
Mm-hmm.
more likely than not, unless it is something particularly compelling, which there's nothing that's going to meet that bar if they can make a prima facie showing under this lawsuit.
I have a lot to say about this, but at some point in this, Ventrella did that. You have to get what's called a subpoena ducis tecum. Okay, you're a real lawyer. She was being so condescending to whoever it was that she was talking about.
It was definitely a real Legally Blonde moment. This whole presentation, she was just like, I'm going to throw out as many legal terms that I remember from law school as I can to try to convince my colleagues that I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
All the time. I have cases like this all the time. So well, if she does, then she knows she's lying. So that's good. What she described in terms of the process is accurate. Like to get a patient's medical records, particularly when they're a non-party, that's accurate. But like the rest of it that she said is insane.
The judge is absolutely going to allow those medical records in.
Yes.
The doctor is not going to file a protective order to prevent them from coming in.
Let's talk about two different scenarios, right? One is going to be where a doctor or some sort of medical provider in our state has been sued, and did they or did they not provide an abortion? Like that's the issue, right? So like there is no scenario under that where the records are not getting turned over.
Right.
It's not for a judge to decide whether or to, to interject whether you think that like this cause of action is valid or that this person is pursuing it in a way that like doesn't have ulterior motives. The way this would come up, it's not going to be like in the context of like, does this person have a cause of action? That will have already been shown. Like, in order to get to the point where you're getting discovery, either nobody has challenged whether that person should be suing or not, or they've already established that. And like, you don't have to establish very much to be able to state a cause of action. And it doesn't matter if you have an ulterior motive for doing it too. As long as you have stated enough facts that under this incredibly vague and broad law, like shows that like you have a right to pursue this claim, that's all that you need to show. And as a judge, then both the plaintiff and the defendant needs these medical records they're saying that what happened is an abortion, and the doctor is saying that what happened is not. There's zero way to determine that either way without the medical records, right? So that's scenario one. Scenario two, and you would hope that in this realm, the judges would be more judicious about not allowing patient medical records to be turned over. But this is what's going to happen. What's being alleged is like, I think she had an abortion. Like my ex-husband, because the cause of action goes on for 10 years. So 10 years later, I think she had an abortion. And, you know, she says she didn't. She says she had a miscarriage, but I think she had an abortion. And I've sued her friends, and I've sued the distributors and the wholesalers of these drugs. Because what I know is that she told me she was not happy she was pregnant. She told her friends that. You know, we have, I have, you know, text messages that I stole from her where she asked her friends, like, can you look online and see if there's anything that like we can do about this? Like that kind of evidence. And, but she says that like she, you know, in the end that's not what happened, that she just had a miscarriage. So there's like multiple issues here where you could imagine medical records coming into play. Like one, like I want the patient's medical record. I want her medical records with her therapist, because she's going to have talked about how she was so unhappy that she was pregnant and whether she had an abortion. And this is not unrealistic. This happens in cases all the time. That's not a frivolous argument that you may have said to your you know, therapist that like, you know, I really wanted to have an abortion, or I'm so glad that I had whatever.
To Rep. Hilferty's point.
To Rep. Hilferty's point, if you're say like the distributor or, you know, the wholesaler of these drugs, then you would be like, I want this patient's medical records of her history of having miscarriages. She is saying that she had a miscarriage. She is saying that like she did not like use our drug, you know, but you're saying that she did all these internet searches and our friends helped her with internet searches and whatever. You know, we want the evidence to be able to show that like it looks like more likely than not that, you know, she was prone to having miscarriages. So there's a million ways that a patient's medical records would be relevant. And you would hope that a judge in the two later scenarios that I said would be more judicious about being like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to get into like all the long history. We're not going to get into her, you know, discussions with privileged conversations with a therapist. But like, there's no scenario in which like the actual what medical care was actually provided or not provided, where those records are not going to be turned over. They're always going to be turned over.
The pharmacist is going to be liable in this case as well. If the doctor write a prescription and you go to the drugstore, get a prescription filled.
No, they will not be a solidary obligor under this legislation because pharmacists is exempted.
Yeah, pharmacists exempted out?
No, it's they're exempted out in the same way that doctors are, which is if you've complied with our already really vague, hard to comply with law, take that to the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, she just had to throw in another legal.
She did, I know.
She's having a hard time at this point.
She was not having a hard time. She was doing just fine.
You've been divorced 3 years, and your husband wants to come back and file this action and say that someone gave his former wife a pill that caused an abortion.
They will not be able to pursue their claim unless one, the mother is added as a party, in which case she will have to be the plaintiff, or two, the mother consents to getting the medical records in court, or three, the judge rules that.
So he wouldn't be able to do that unless she consented.
As I just stated.
The first two things totally not true. Or the judge rules that, which as we've just talked about, a judge is always going to rule. I would rule that. I, understanding all of these issues, if I were a judge, would turn over this patient's medical records, at least in scenario A of what we've already talked about. Like there's no world in which a judge would not say that this is not only like extremely relevant evidence, but maybe the only relevant evidence.
The only. Yeah. This is the only way for either the plaintiff or the defendant
to prove their case.
Yeah. Rep. Marcel, who we just heard, was the last one that actually got to ask a question, because the next member who stood up, who was a Republican, one of her colleagues, stood up to ask a question. And at that point, she waived. In Louisiana, a member can just say, I waive questions, and then they just shut down debate. They don't have to answer any more questions. But other members can come to the floor on the bill, and they can talk about either their support or their opposition to the bill. And so that's what happens next in the hearing. Is Representative Landry comes to the floor on the bill and talks about her opposition to it. And then that offers an opportunity for the other members to start asking her questions, and some of them get really creative in doing that. So let's listen to a little bit of that.
Rep. Glorioso for a question on the bill.
I'm going to waive questions, Mr. Speaker.
The members are waiving any further questions. Representative Mandy Landry for the floor.
So 9.5 years from now, your daughter's real jerk of an ex-boyfriend, really terrible, she finally got rid of him, finds a second-rate plaintiff's attorney, because this is a plaintiff's attorney dream bill, because you don't have to prove anything. Finds this plaintiff's attorney, says, you know, we were breaking up, things were kind of bad, I'm almost positive, or I am positive she ended the pregnancy. I'm not sure if she bought the pills online. I think her roommate gave them to her, or it might have been the doctor who prescribed them. I'm not really sure. Let's get the roommate and the doctor in here. So first of all, how's this guy and his mom, because she's in the suit too, how are they going to prove you were pregnant? Maybe your medical records show that you were pregnant and had a medically, you know, you had a medical issue and had a miscarriage. Maybe they don't show it because you didn't go to the doctor and you bought pills or you flew out of state. Who knows? How is he going to prove it was his? Because it's gone. The evidence is gone. OBGYNs are not going to be able to get medical malpractice insurance because they can't go to the medical, the patient's compensation fund anymore. So who is going to insure OBGYNs? And while the woman cannot be sued in this, it's her body and her life being completely dragged through the mud up until 10 years after this happened. Her medical records, her on the stand, her testimony, she probably has to hire a lawyer. Her roommate has to hire a lawyer and doesn't even remember this guy, because this is going to be used as retribution, whether it's 6 months or 10 years from now. You don't have to show damages at all, that anything happened, you were just mad about it. Causes, what does cause mean? If I drive you, if I tell you the website, where are we going with this? It's really difficult to tell, especially when a miscarriage is happening. Was it a miscarriage? Was it intentional? Where did the pills come from? What about the doctor's advice? Is it a bona fide medical decision? Who's going to determine? Is the Attorney General going to determine that that was a good medical decision? Is it the doctor who determines it? Who knows?
Mandy's not wrong about any of that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, Representative Landry. Representative Landry.
Exactly. And this again, like part of the problem then with like just the way that the cause of action is being conceived of is that it won't be hard to state one, right? Like you know, the way that the law works is that when a petition is filed, the judge has to assume that everything said in the petition is true. So everything said in it is true. And does that state a cause of action? And if that's true, then we move forward to all of this discovery of everybody's fucking medical records and text messages and whatever. And if you make it so that there's almost nothing that you have to allege to state the cause of action, then yeah, we're like moving on pretty quickly to category 2.
Yeah. Okay, so then of the other members of the House that still had questions about the bill,
right,
decide to start asking Representative Landry. So this is Representative Matt Willard, who's the chair of the Democratic Caucus, and he's very smart and clever, as you will hear in this next clip.
We're aware that there are websites out there that provide access to women who are seeking abortion care. Does your objection have anything to do with whether those websites would be held liable under this bill?
Anyone that's involved with any woman in the state who's trying to end a pregnancy and reaches out to anyone could be liable, most likely under this bill.
If a couple is together, they end up getting an abortion, and they break up a few years later, and the parents of the husband are upset with the girlfriend or the wife, could they use that like as a revenge tool or to just create problems?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely insane that someone's ex-in-laws or just my ex-boyfriend's parents could drag me into court along with my doctor and my roommate or anyone else to try to prove a negative.
Rep. Willard, can you ask questions on her objection versus the questions on the bill?
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, I had a couple of pointed questions for the author. She waived, so I would like to get the perspective from Rep. Landry.
Everything that we're talking about in terms of what could be like weaponized or used as harassment, like that is true. But the reason that there's actually a likelihood that that would happen is that your ulterior motive doesn't matter. If you have stated a cause of action and it is relevant, it doesn't also matter that you have an ulterior motive.
The other thing that I really want to note, and we haven't talked about this yet, so this will be new information to you. But as you know, I hate the crisis pregnancy centers with the passion of 1,000 suns.
True.
And so I'm constantly watching what they're fucking doing. I look at their websites about twice a year. I go through basically the entire website. There's about 35 crisis pregnancy centers in Louisiana. Just to see what information is on this. One of the things that I've noticed in the last year is a lot of them now have very explicit messaging programs targeting men. You don't have to let her get an abortion, essentially, is what their message is. Don't be convinced by her that you can't raise this baby. So the crisis pregnancy centers are going to be involved in this and find and recruit and identifying men and encouraging them to file these lawsuits.
Well, and again, where it's going to be in situations where I think she had an abortion. She was pregnant. I went out of town. When I came back, then she said that she had had a miscarriage, and I don't believe that.
But I'm pointing out that all of this stuff is not happening just randomly on its own.
No.
This is a strategy, and that the entire anti-abortion industry is working.
Well, it's also right, and it's a strategy that we're giving those people standing,
right? Yeah,
as opposed to just trying to get
and when they get
more involved in the decision making,
and when they get the $100,000 judgment, then they can donate that to the crisis pregnancy center and get a tax credit.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
These motherfuckers.
Nobody's gonna donate. My mother.
Yeah, they'll get a tax credit. They can get a tax credit.
Who gives a shit? Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, then Representative Glorioso, who got cut off because Representative Ventrilo was like, I'm not answering any more questions.
Some really good points.
Maybe this was his opportunity to shine, to grant.
He did a good job.
Yeah.
And he's a Republican this time. With Rep. Helferty and Rep. Glorioso, they are Republicans. I have never, ever seen, Republicans stand up on the floor and question legislation like this. People like them, who are reasonable Republicans, but not just not voting for the bill, but openly standing up and questioning it, never happened.
Right. It's true. It's true. Okay, here we go.
Do you read this bill to create a situation of absolute liability? Normally, when we create a cause of action, we state that there shall be a cause of action for unlawful abortion. This says that the person is liable. So to me, that creates absolute liability. The way I read this, each person listed would have an individual and separate right of action. Is that how you read it?
That's how I read it.
Let's say a pregnant woman drove to Mississippi and saw a doctor there and had an abortion or got an abortion pill. Let's say she got a pill and she brought the pill back to Louisiana and took the pill here. So the abortion occurred in Louisiana because she took the pill here. She could then turn around and sue that doctor, and there's no analysis of how we handle comparative fault. The 10-year preemptive period, to me, seems like it would create massive issues for insurance for doctors, and I don't know if we have a preemptive period that long on anything else. Do you know if we have any other preemptive periods that long?
The member's out of time. Is there an objection to granting 2 minutes? There is an objection. All those in favor of granting an additional 2 minutes, vote yea. All those opposed, vote nay. We have 37 yeas, 49 nays, and the motion fails.
So several of the things that he brought up there are additional problems in the tort exam scenario of this, like the comparative fault problems. There are endless reasons why this bill has like no similarity to any other liability law that we have.
Right. At that moment, the Speaker of the House announces that Representative Landry is out of time because they're only granted so much time to come and her time has expired. And then the Speaker will interrupt and say, the member's out of time. Does the body want to grant the member more time? And almost always they do. Almost always they do.
So it's another way of like not allowing any questions to continue.
Right. And just to be clear, already when Representative Ventrella was being asked questions and was answering questions, albeit not truthfully, but she was answering them, she had run out of time and they granted her more time. But now that Representative Landry is the one answering the questions, telling the truth, then the members decide that they don't want to give her more time.
Right, the majority is.
I will say this, a lot of Republicans voted to grant her more time.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of them did. So what happens next is Representative Freeman comes to the floor, starts off by telling the story of her own sister who had a very devastating pregnancy experience, and it was
Pregnancy law.
This is very personal to Representative Freeman. Also, just for some context, Representative Freeman is dealing with some health issues this session, and so she's not there all the time, and she is picking her moments very carefully because it's exhausting. I mean, we're exhausted, and we're like relatively healthy.
And she's one of our biggest champs, a huge champion, and I love and respect her. And she's, dealing with a lot personally already.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to make sure that we played what she had to say because it was really compelling.
Rep. Freeman for the floor on the bill.
Many of you are aware of friends or have had miscarriages yourselves, that this could be used inappropriately in a miscarriage situation. Even if the boyfriend or the husband is not feeling that way, a grandparent could come along who might be an estranged member of the family and file a lawsuit. What we are doing when we pass laws like this is making it difficult for people like my sister who chose to try and have this baby to be able to have the doctors to take care of her. We have up to $100,000 value for each one of these plaintiffs who might put a suit forward. If we believe that baby's life is worth $100,000, because we just put a price tag on the baby's life, where are we at funding $100,000 for each life in this state? Boy, we are making it really difficult for my daughters and your granddaughters to have healthy pregnancies every time we pass a bill like this.
That was really good.
Yeah.
That was really good. Because what would it look like? I mean, it was a point that Representative Carter also made, which is like we spend so much time on this anti-abortion stuff,
right?
And we have a high infant mortality rate, we have a high maternal mortality rate, and we're not making those investments. I mean, we would be ruling the country if we were to make those kinds of investments. So I thought it was a really good point.
Or like put a fraction of what, the number of babies born every year, like in Louisiana, like put a fraction of $100,000 like per person into all of the work that should be being done on maternity.
All right. So anyway, Ventrella gets up again and
I don't even remember.
And to close on her bill.
I probably had blacked out by this point.
Well, it's funny because when I was going back and rewatching to make these clips, all this happened a lot faster than I initially thought.
It felt like it was going on for a long time.
It really felt like it was going on for a long time. I don't want to give her the last word.
Don't worry about comment.
But yeah.
She won't get the last word on our part.
If you're upset about what might happen to you if you're prescribing abortion pills within the borders of the state of Louisiana, then perhaps you should not be prescribing them. So members, I urge you to support this solid piece of legislation and let your voice send a message that in the state of Louisiana, we are pro-life.
So again, let's circle back to, if you're upset about what's going to happen to you if you're prescribing the pills into Louisiana, those people ain't worried about this shit. nothing's going to happen to them with this bill. They're going to be shielded by civil liability because their states have decided that what they're doing as doctors is legitimate and protected, and it doesn't matter. All the other things we talked about, those people aren't going to be your roommate, the patient who's like, who's now like basically defending themselves no matter what. The doctors here, none of those people.
Also, just the way that they close, the way she closed on this bill, and we've heard this so many times over the years. The last thing that
we're pro-life.
Yeah, pass this bill so that we can send a message that we're pro-life. Like the message fucking received.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Message has been received. Yeah. Also, if you want to send a message, I said limit the bill to the things we're sending a message on, to the people you just said, the out-of-state people are prescribing it. That's fine. Limit the bill to that so that it doesn't do all of the other untold damage that we've already talked about, which is actually your intent. So that's why there's no way you're going to ever limit the bill in that way. Your intent is actually to do all of these other things.
The next step for this bill is it's going over to the Senate side, and it will be assigned to a committee. We're not sure which committee yet, and then it will get a hearing, and we're not sure exactly when that's going to happen. But we will obviously keep talking about this bill because it is fucked up.
And we'll know all of those things by next episode.
Yeah. So we'll revisit.
To all the lawyers out there, read the bill and then just think about whether you would have wanted like 2, 3, or 4 hours of your torts exam to explain all the issues.
Yeah. Obviously, ultimately, the bill did pass, but I will say it barely passed. I mean, it got the fewest votes that I have ever seen any anti-abortion, right to life sponsored bill ever, because a ton of Republicans walked on the bill. They chose not to vote for it. They didn't vote against it, but they chose not to vote for it.
So there were 59 votes in favor. That's not like a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of a majority.
We have 105 members of the House of Representatives.
So it barely passed.
Right.
And the walking on a bill is it's where you like make yourself absent from the chamber. The bill has to pass by a majority of those present. If something is sort of like controversial or whatever, like it's not something that you want to be registered as a yes or a no vote, then you will just like not be around for that. But that's a brave thing to do in a lot of these scenarios.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is notable, and I think that at this point, the stuff that the Right to Life is asking these members to vote for is insane, and they know it's insane. Yes. And yes, they should be voting against it 100%.
Yeah, I'm not a I'm not a purist on that shit. I've never been a purist. I wasn't a purist on that shit.
I'm not either. But legitimately, it is insane, and they should object to it, just as a point of order. But a lot of them live in districts in which they just really can't do that.
They're afraid of the right to life. Right. I mean, like. So that was just, again, why it is still brave of them to be like, I am not going to vote for this. So, we got to bring people along. I am perfectly fine with Republicans just being like, I will not vote for this, because it does make it less likely and harder for a bill to pass. It's not like a meaningless statement.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, I'll just say for anyone who is listening to this who lives in Representative Stephanie Hilferty's district, or Representative who is in Slidell, and Rep. Hilferty is in the area around New Orleans. We would encourage you to call them and thank them. We don't see a lot of Republicans pushing back on this, and it's really important.
And definitely not in an open and obvious way. Right. That's a products liability joke for the lawyers out there.
They need encouragement. They need to understand that the people in their district support them when they take a brave stand. So I thought that maybe we would talk a little bit about House Bill 429 by Representative Boyd, which was also heard this week about she's trying to prohibit employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. That hearing was real fucked up, but this is a long episode. I think we'll hold that. Maybe we could talk about it next week. Or maybe I'll just do like a, special little
just laying her
Michelle's take sometime during the week. Yeah, Michelle's take. So maybe we'll do a little special thing on that later this week. And if not, don't be pissed off. We also wanted to let folks know who are in Louisiana or in the New Orleans area that Lift Louisiana's annual gala is on Thursday this coming week.
Oh, shit.
Apparently, Ellie hasn't gotten her ticket. She has
It's like, isn't it May 22nd? It's like forever from now.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's snuck up on me
Apparently
too,
it's
but
not forever from
it is on Thursday, and it's always a good time. We'll have Mardi Gras dance crews performing. We've got food. We'll have booze. We'll have the giant Ruth Bader Ginsburg head bust for people to take pictures with.
Our RBG honoree
Yes,
is Caitlin Joshua.
that's excellent. Caitlin Joshua, who has been an incredibly outspoken advocate.
Yes,
for abortion.
including, again, this shit relevant this week, testified at the Capitol on this bill and is a plaintiff in our lawsuit on the controlled substances.
Yeah. So the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award for Fierce Advocacy this year, and we are super excited about that. What do the listeners need to do, Allie?
Okay. They need to tell other friends to listen to this podcast.
Oh, we hit 1,000 downloads
All right.
this week.
Okay, so we're getting there, folks. Tell more friends then.
Yeah, by the next episode, we want another 1,000.
That's right. That's right. You gotta, get on, folks. Get on. Tell your friends, rate, subscribe, listen, and then go on Instagram and send us a voice memo with your seriously moment or just other stuff that you might want to know that's fucked up going on.
Yeah. We really want reviews. People should write reviews, because somebody wrote us a review that said that they wanted more impersonations from you.
Yeah,
So,
which I don't even. I just do it every once in a while naturally. So yeah. So tell us what you guys like. And,
and we may or may not listen, because
I've got sexual consent. Tell me what you like. Maybe I'll do it maybe.
maybe.
At least if you tell me, then I know.
All right. We'll be back next week. Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.